Grand Hood Rising, everybody. I wanted to come on and I wanted to speak about something that's so important to begin to process in this time. We are living in a time right now where death is really rampant. Fear is so thick in the air that we could take a knife and we can cut it. As someone who deems herself a spiritual leader, I myself have had a lot of information and forewarning around things that are currently happening. And last year in October, when I was in Los Angeles, I was sitting in a spiritual seance, and the spirits warned us what was going to happen this year. But for those of you who don't feel like you had forewarning, for those of you who didn't feel like you knew that this was coming, I wanted to sit something with you today, and hopefully from the confusion that you are feeling, you can begin to have some sort of clarity and you can begin to clear the path forward for yourself. This morning I sat and I asked my spirits, what do we have to understand about currently so much death that is happening? And death is really a hard thing to process, especially physical death and people physically leaving this plane at this time. And for those of you who have people who are physically leaving this plane right now, I send you lots of love and light and good energy as you lose people in the physical form whose spirits are now transitioning their physical existence. And it's not something that's easy to process, but through life, we have to learn how to process death. And so many of us have a problem with death, and this pandemic is bringing so much fear around that. In every season and phase of our life, understanding the importance of death is going to be crucial. And so when I asked about death and what we need to know about death at this time, especially for those of us who are staying in the physical realm, is that we have to understand the danger of our habits, and that habits become sicknesses. And there's so many of the habits of human beings that have been causing sickness over time. And we are being given time now. We're being given another chance to move past these sicknesses. One of the biggest things that causes sickness through our lives is often money, power. These things have been causing so much sickness on our earth for eons. And a lot of us are living in a time where we are actually beginning to shift paradigms, and we can see a whole new existence of humankind and earth being born. But you have to understand how much of what we deemed what we were here for before this happened, we had to understand that it was causing us so much sickness. And right now on this earth, sickness is putting people into fear, but sickness is also putting people into perspective. So I want to ask you this. So often we don't realize that what's causing the confusion is because we have misplaced our love. I would challenge you to ask yourself, before this all started happening, what did you love? And after this, what you love, the answer might change. Because we have to realize that our love was misplaced. So many of us loved having the power, loved having the money, loved having certain things that we didn't realize that these habits were creating sickness within us. And if you have to lose your peace in order of pursuit of power at the cost of spiritual understanding, you are often going to create sickness within yourself and sickness within your life. And that's why so many of us now are sitting in this world in a cesspool of sickness, because that is what the collective has created. So in this time we are sitting down and we are sitting in the midst of so much death, we have to understand that Spirit is giving us time to reevaluate how we pursue the things we love and how we pursue power and how we use those things to go through multiple deaths, but deaths of ascension on a physical existence through spiritual understanding. And so many people on this realm go through the rat race every day. And they are trying to accumulate power, purpose, but from a place of a lack of spiritual understanding. If you go to my YouTube and you go back to the last few readings of the year, I told you how important understanding ancestral wisdom and spiritual understanding was going to be in 2020. That it was not going to be about a rush. I talked about people who wanted to say that they had a boat, right? But if you don't know how to drive the boat, it gets you nowhere. It becomes dangerous. It becomes a toy that you don't know how to operate. 2020 is about learning to drive the boat for many of us, learning aspects of ourselves. I even remember I was speaking about levels of the iceberg. And so many of us have only touched the tip of the iceberg of our spiritual understanding for ourselves. You're just at the tip, and there are layers and layers and layers of depth to your wisdom. But so much of humankind has not been tapping into their wisdom, their real innate wisdom of why they are here, the things that they are supposed to love, and how they are supposed to use those things to accumulate in understanding to help better not only themselves, but the collective consciousness. And I know this is going to be hard to hear, but one of the most advanced technologies on earth is the human body. And the reason why a lot of people are going to die and are dying this year, because they have not been advancing their technology, especially on a spiritual level, on a mental level, on an emotional level. A friend of mine asked me yesterday, Tatiana, what do you feel about this? I said, I feel like it's sad, really sad to say, but a lot of people are meeting their karma. And you have to understand, karma is not whether it's good or bad, it's a result of the choices that you make. So many people are leaving us, and I said this might be emotionally triggering, but some of our family, some of our friends, a virus can easily more affect people at times who are susceptible to being a host. And when you understand sickness on a metaphysical, spiritual, emotional, mental level, you understand you are more susceptible, right? When we think about being more susceptible because our immune system is already compromised, when you understand immunity on a spiritual level, people don't understand in spirituality, you're more easily possessed when you are a willing host, when you invite things in. And I'm not saying, because some of us are asking, why are people dying? Why are good people leaving? Even sometimes good people's karma is a result of not changing things that have been holding them back. I know lots of good people who are good to other people, but part of their karma and clearing to build their immunity is putting boundaries, not inviting certain things into their life, not inviting things that continue to keep them back. And that's what hurts a lot of us, is that we think that we're just looking at this on a physical level when this is deeply spiritual. And Spirit warned us last year, especially in Santeria, don't put money first. Do not put money first in 2020. If you put money first, especially over your health in 2020, you are going to get a rude awakening. So focus and reanalyze the reason why you do everything. I pulled from this book that I've been working with, Obsession and Possession, and it says the danger of habits. Habits are sicknesses on 3 levels of personality. We have physical, emotional, and mental habits. Physical habits are formed when we regularly eat or drink the same thing, do the same thing year after year, or walk the same way repeatedly, and so on. Habits are controlled by certain energy circuits that form in the etheric body when we continue doing the same thing. Once the etheric circuit is formed, it perpetuates the actions of the habit. Emotional habits are also the result of repetition of certain emotional acts. Emotional circuits are called glamours or hang-ups, which when formed try to perpetuate the action. Emotional habits are mostly related to certain negative conditions such as fear, anger, hatred, greed, jealousy, revenge, sadness. I'm not going to read much more. Once the emotional events of these elements are formed, people turn into their slaves. People turn into their slaves. A time comes when they even realize that they do not know why they hate, get angry, or become sad, but because they are caught by the hatred or other emotions, they cannot rid themselves of it. They become like those who know that cigarettes are not good for them, but continue and cannot help but smoking. So I'm going to stop there. But the most important part is once the emotional events of these elements are formed, people turn into their slaves. 2020 is such a year where we can choose to emancipate ourselves from slavery, especially mental slavery, emotional slavery, physical slavery, spiritual slavery, and become free. Or we can continue to let these things consume us and become sicknesses, and eventually we succumb to them. All this talk about 5G, all this talk about, shifting into, the fourth and fifth dimensions, you have to understand, if us as human beings are one of the most advanced technologies here on earth, we can acclimate. We can acclimate as these things are happening, but you have to keep your consciousness high. At this time, you cannot feed fear. At this time, you cannot feed lower energies that are trying to further enslave you. One of the most important immunities in this time is to work on your spiritual understanding and your mental health. And a lot of you are being so triggered because you should have done this shit a way long fucking time ago. And one thing else I wanted to pull on, which I did, I'm constantly pulling about money at this time because money is something that's scaring people. So this card that I pulled says, money has a life force, an energy force of its own. The conditions under which you and your money live will, in the end, determine whether your life will be a rich one or not. And then on the back it says, for money to find you, it has to work its way through your emotions, thoughts, words, and actions. To become a beacon that illuminates the way for money to come in, clear the path of the negative perceptions and internal chaos preventing you from achieving true prosperity. This is so deep on a spiritual level. So many of us in humanity have a negative energy through money. We have been looking at money from a place of so much negativity, and that negative life force of money has attached itself to us, and that is why we don't know our true prosperity. We don't know our true wealth. Bob Marley once said, to gain all the silver and gold in the world and to lose your soul, whew. And that's what we're being challenged on. You can have wealth, you can have prosperity in this world, you can be rich, but what are your richnesses founded upon in 2020? We are moving into new money. We are moving into a new way of doing things. A lot of people are going to come into so many blessings, so much prosperity, so much wealth, so much richness over the next year. But we have to redefine the life force energy of prosperity and wealth and currency on this earth. And it starts here. And it starts here. Your character, your ori, your consciousness, all of these things are going to play a factor in the new paradigm that we are creating. And I am sorry to say it, it's going to trigger people, but some of the things that are happening now are a result of karma and the choices and decisions that people have made. And if you are someone who is lucky enough to continue existing on this physical realm as we are going through this ascension, please stay consistent to your spiritual growth. Because a lot of people, although we love and care for them, we cannot interrupt the karma that is happening at this time for them. The karma that a lot of people are reaping is a result of the choices that they have made, whether they are good or bad people. Some people have been living for the wrong things, and a lot of people do not know that they made a contract to leave this year on the physical realm. But if you are here continuing forward, Please focus on what you need to do. Peace.